All right, welcome to our first project of the school year, which is our puzzle cube project. High level overview of the project. Each of the students, you are provided 8 sets of 8 cubes, each set a different color. When you first get them, they're in sticks of 8 in a straight line. You must create 8 unique puzzle pieces to create an overall 8 by 8 puzzle. So if you look in the example in the lower right hand corner, you'll see a finished example. An additional couple constraints. Each puzzle piece must include all 8 cubes of that color, and there can be no straight lines of more than 5 of the same color. So for example, if you look at the red, you'll see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in a row. The blue, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in a row. The yellow, again, it's only 5 in a row total, but really it's only 4 as far as the constraint goes. So this here is a good example. Do not make my puzzle, make your own. There's millions of combinations that you can work, and that is the overall project. So now on to how to go about working on this in Fusion. Alright, welcome back to my next video. So today we're going to work on our first project, which is our puzzle cube project. We've already gone through in class and we've started learning some sketching. We've done isometric sketching. We've gone through, for those who aren't in my class, we have these little snap cubes. Let me grab mine real quick. Got a whole bag of them down here. And so each of my students is given a set of 8 different colors, 8 blocks each of these 3/4 inch cubes, so 3/4 inches on each side. And the project is they have to create a 8 by 8, essentially 2-dimensional puzzle with these 3/4 inch cubes. They can't have any color more than 5 in a row. Every part has to be a unique shape, and once they combine together, it's got to form an 8 by 8 square. So if you watch the next couple of videos, you'll see the puzzle pieces start to form. You can see it kind of starting to take shape on my recent images or recent files here on my Fusion home screen. But again, this is our project and what we're working on. So with this being our first adventure into Fusion, we're going to kind of take it a little bit slow. We're going to walk through some different things. We're going to learn about how to create a sketch, how to turn that 2D sketch into a 3-dimensional object, and then we'll start talking about assembly, sub-assemblies, and things like that. So in this video, we're just going to work on sketching those cubes. So from the very beginning, when we open up Fusion, we get to our home screen. I'm going to just go up here to my untitled, which is my brand new fresh file just created a few minutes ago when I opened up Fusion. First thing we do in my class, and you should do in the real world, so kind of best practices, is we're going to first create a location to save our files. So I'm going to go new project. These are going to be my video files. You don't necessarily need to create a new project. So once you go into there, we're going to create our first folder. So each project should be in its own folder. So this is going to be Puzzle Cube Project. Type that in, hit enter. Double click on there, you can see it's completely empty. So now I've got a location to save all of my files as I start to work on the cubes and then on the puzzle pieces. So now I'm going to hide the data panel using that data panel toggle button we talked about. I'm then going to click on save. So the first thing after we've created our new folder, or we're starting a new file, is then to save that file. Fusion is somewhat cloud-based, so we always want to save, so that way as we work, in case we get a power loss or anything like that, it knows where to save it. So we're going to go puzzle cube, or we're just going to call this cube 1. We're going to want to make sure that our location says where we just created. So we're in video files, puzzle cube project, we're good. If for whatever reason we wanted to save it somewhere else, we just click this drop down arrow. Depending upon the resolution of your screen, when you clicked on that drop down arrow, you might have got something like this, and you're like, how do I hit the save button? All you have to do is left click and hold in this white space and drag this window up. You can then select any of your overall project folders. So for me, that's a lot of my classes. I do everything here in my video files folder. And then we've got my puzzle cube project. Say I skipped step 1 and I did not create the folder beforehand, I can also just do it from right here. Click on new folder, call it puzzle cube number 2. I'm going to hit cancel. I'm going to save it a second time. I really don't want that second folder. We're just going to go cube is the name of my file. We're going to hit save. So you'll know you've done it right. It changes cube up here to cube V1. We've got our colored in cube. We've now saved. Our save button is also deactivated for right now because we haven't made any changes since we last saved. Now if I were to go through, make a couple of changes, and then lose power or accidentally close out of Fusion, it will tell me, hey, hold on, I need to save this file first, and it knows exactly where to save. Okay, so now it's time to get into actually creating our first object, our first design. 99% of the time, when you open up a new file, you're going to create a sketch. So that is this first button here on the upper left under solid. If you hover over the icon, the tooltip will pop open and it'll tell you kind of a little bit more about it. So creating sketch puts you in sketch mode. It's where you have the foundation of a design. And then from there you can do all the sort of 3D commands, extrude, revolve, etc. to get those 3D bodies going. So in order for it to work, you're going to have to select a construction plane, then create your lines or your different shapes to get that geometry going, and making sure you constrain it, all those things to get a good sketch. And we'll talk about those as we go along. So first thing we're going to do is, again, hit this create sketch button. You'll see now I've got a handful of, I've got 3 yellow, orange colored squares. These are our different planes. So typically if you're creating something, you want it to be created, so when your finished object is done, it looks like the real world object. So if I'm doing this Diet Coke can, I don't want to create it, on the side view and have the can horizontal. I want to create it on the top plane. I want to have it set down like this so it looks like a Coke can and it's not knocked over or upside down. So we're just going to go ahead and click on one of these 3 squares. When I do that, you'll see my view cube over here has now spun, and it shows exactly what plane I'm looking down at. In this case, I'm looking straight down at the top, which is perfect. From here, now you'll notice I'm in the sketch toolbar. Up here, I've got a whole bunch of different options. So we've got our create, we've got by default line, rectangle, circles, splines. We've got the mirror function and dimensions. If you don't like the options that are there, you can always click on this create with a little drop down arrow. Anywhere you see these little arrows, that means, hey, there's more options. So you can click on the word, you get a whole bunch more. So more lines, more rectangle options, circles. And throughout the course, again, we'll learn all these different features. But for now, we're creating squares, 3/4 inch squares. So squares are rectangles, and we're going to start with the basic one here, which is 2-point rectangle. So we're going to left click on that button. You know you've clicked it when it's now highlighted. So again, the name is 2-point rectangle. First click will create the first point. We want to always start in the origin, or almost always, I should say. So I'm going to click there. I'm going to drag my mouse out. So now I've got a rough square or rectangle on my work screen. You'll notice I've got one dimension off to the left that's highlighted. Looks like a text box where you can type. It is. And there's another one below the square or rectangle that's a text box, but it doesn't look like you can type right now. You can't quite yet, but I'll show you how to get there. So this is where we're going to enter our dimensions for our length and our width of our cube. So again, our cubes are 3/4 of an inch on each side. So I can either go 3/4, which is the fraction version of 3/4 of an inch. When I hit tab to go to the next dimension, you'll see it goes 3/4 times 1 inch. I can also just go 0.75, hit tab. I think it looks cleaner if you use the decimal, so I've changed both to 0.75. And then again, tab just toggles back and forth. If you don't know where the tab button is, it's the button right above the caps lock on the far left of your keyboard. Once you've got your two links or your two dimensions in there, you'll see the little lock icons. It means once you're done, it's going to constrain that, which means it's going to lock this kind of square in place. So I'm going to press enter. And you'll notice all of my lines are black. So that means this shape is fully constrained. It knows exactly where it started at the origin 0, 0. It knows it went up 3/4 of an inch, over 3/4 of an inch, down 3/4 of an inch, and back to the origin 3/4 of an inch. So it knows exactly where each one of those dots is, so therefore it's fully constrained. It also knows, hey, I made a rectangle starting at the origin. So I've got these two symbols here, or well, total of 4, but 2 are identical on each side. These are our constraints, and they look just like this. Those because it's the same button. So it is letting us know that this top line and bottom line are horizontal, and the left line and the right line are vertical. So they're not slightly off, not at 89 degrees. They're exactly 90 degrees. We've got a right angle here, right angle here. We've got a square. So now that we've got our shape locked in, constrained, we're going to hit Finish Sketch. It's going to spin by default back to that isometric view, basically to this corner or to the house, but a little zoomed out versus the house. So our next step is to take this from a 2D square into a 3D cube. So instead of Create Sketch, we're going to go over here to our next few Create tools. So in this case, we're going to do Extrude, which if we hover over that tooltip, we see it adds depth to an open or closed sketch, profile, or face. So that's kind of the definition of it. And in order to use it, we're going to select the extrusion type, select the sketch or the profile or face we want to extrude, and then tell it how much. And if we want to do any sort of uniqueness by putting some taper angles, or if we want to do thin and just do walls instead. So we're going to go ahead and click this button. You'll see because I already had my square selected because it was the last thing I did, it tells me it's got one selected. If for whatever reason I didn't have the square selected or I didn't know what I wanted to extrude, it would open up this pop-up window and it would just say select. So you always want to look over here at these little pop-up windows. Typically if you see something highlighted in blue, you know you've got to manipulate or do something there for that feature to work. So again, I'm going to go back to selecting this square. Simple as left clicking in the middle of my square. Now if I wanted to not do this really scientifically, I can just drag up and down on that arrow. Once you left click, if I move over, it doesn't matter that I'm not on the arrow anymore, but it'll work. A little bit easier, better way to do this is to either type. You see I've got, again, that dimension box that's editable in the middle of my field. I can go 0.75, hit tab. It now has raised that cube or extruded that cube up 3/4 of an inch. By doing it this way, it's now taking me straight to my taper angle. We're not going to do anything in this project, but just to show you what this does, if I say change this to 20, instead of being a straight up cube, it's kind of a, you know, an upside down pyramid with with the point or the top of it chopped off. We'll change that back to 0. I want that to be 0. The other place I can change my distance is over here in the pop-up. So that's typically where I do it, but I thought I'd be fancy and do it that way. Your type of extrude, so this is a solid extrude. A thin extrude would give me more of a shell look. The start, we're going to leave it at profile plane, but I could do it as offset. And then if I had an offset plane, or I could tell it how far I wanted to offset it, say I wanted to do it 1/4 of an inch up, it raises a 1/4 of an inch. If I had multiple objects, I can start to extrude from the side of an object. We're not going to worry about that right now. Direction, for now, one side. We can do two sides, and we can do different lengths or distances and different taper angles from each. Or we can do it symmetrically. So it's same as the two side, but each side is the same. A little bit fancy. For right now, we're just going to do one side. We want the extent type to say distance. Again, we're just typing in our numbers for right now. But we could go two objects. So if we had multiple objects on the screen, we can extrude from one to the other to essentially close that gap. Or if you were cutting a hole, which is essentially like a reverse extrude, if you want to think of it that way, you could do that. All will do the exact same thing, but instead of just going to the object, if there's multiple objects, it'll extrude all the way across the whole screen or through everything if you're making a hole. Either way, we're going to do distance. We're going to leave it at 0.75, 0 degree taper angle. We're going to leave this as new body. There's a couple of other ones. If you've got multiple shapes and you want to combine them to make one massive shape that looks, a little bit more fancy than just a square or cube, that'd be your join. Cut is how you cut an area out of an existing body. So one way to make a hole, or to remove part of the object to give it a hollowed out kind of feature. Intersect, if you only want where the two different bodies intersect, you can do that. New body and new component. So for now, we're just going to leave this as new body. We're going to hit OK. So there we've got our default 3/4 inch cube. Two things we're going to do before we close out this video. Oh, I've got multiple sketches going on. We're going to delete sketch 1. It doesn't like anything happen there. There we go. We're going to rename our body and our sketch. So by clicking the arrow next to the left of bodies, we get to see how all the different bodies that we've created. We've only created one. A body is just all the different three-dimensional objects you've created that are separate from each other. So if you remember when we did the extrude, if we did, instead of new body, we did join or cut, it would add all those different sketches to make a body. But since we did new body, it gave us a new one. So we're going to right click on the word body 2 to pull up this menu. We're going to rename, and we're just going to call this something simple. So we're just going to call this cube. We're going to do the exact same thing with the sketch 2. We're going to rename that as cube. we want to get in that habit. It's just a best practice as you create something that might have 2, 3, 4, 5 multiple bodies, multiple sketches. If you had to go back and edit something after you've got a timeline that's spanning all the way across, it's a lot easier to just find it here. Since you've got a nice good name on it, double click on it, edit it, and then hit finish sketch or whatever, okay on the extrude, and then the whole timeline will take that change. If not, you'll have a list where it'll have like 20 bodies and 20 sketches. Really hard to go through one by one and figure out where you need to go to make a minor tweak or adjustment to fix your design. So we've got these two renamed. And the last thing we're going to do is we're going to convert this body to a component. So in the next video, we can start assembling things. So to do that, we're just going to right click on where we renamed our body 1 as cube. And we're going to create components from bodies. You'll know that it worked because that body folder has moved or disappeared. And we've got this new one down here that says cube:1. If I hit this drop down arrow to look inside of this component, you'll see now I've got my bodies folder and my cube in there. So now when I go into my next video, we can use this cube as a subassembly to start assembling our completed puzzle pieces. So check out the next video where I walk through how to assemble the cube subassemblies into individual puzzle pieces. Thanks all.